Sorceress. Okay, iridescent. Hey guys, TrepChains here. Just showing off some Sorceress gameplay footage from the Diablo II Resurrected technical alpha in Acts 1 and 2. This is mostly combat footage with a low-level Sorceress using fire and cold skills. Take a look at what the game will look like if you choose to purchase Diablo II Resurrected. Most of the gameplay is the same, with just a few quality of life features, including optional automatic gold pickup, a 10x10 individual and shared stash, and being able to select your minimap location. The big change is the graphics, and I hope you will agree that they look fantastic. The darkness and atmosphere has been captured so well. Noting this is mainly to show off gameplay from Act 1 and Act 2 in Diablo II Resurrected, I hope you will enjoy some Diablo II lore coming from the Book of Cain, the Dark Wanderer, to reflect on the horrors we are fighting in Sanctuary. The Dark Wanderer. It was a dismal time following the horrors of Diablo's rise and the darkening of Tristram. I longed to know the truth of what happened in the final hours before the horrors were ended. But the man who emerged from beneath the cursed cathedral was not the same courageous warrior who had ventured into the catacombs to rescue his brother. Aidan increasingly shunned the company of others. He spent his days in isolation and roamed the streets at night, seemingly without direction or purpose. Indeed, the witch Adria appeared to be the only person capable of offering comfort to Aidan during this sorrowful period. As the rest of the town struggled to recover in the aftermath of Diablo's reign of terror, Aidan and Adria spent long nights behind closed doors. Tristram had become a quiet and sleepy hamlet once again. Chaos had spread across Sanctuary of the town that had drawn the bravest adventurers in the world, like flies to the spider's web, only to meet their doom. It was many days after Aidan's harrowing journey to save his brother that the haunted warrior spoke to me. He confided in me the truth then of what he had faced in the lowest depths of the catacombs. Aidan and the adventurers who had survived to the end found themselves in an area the broken young man described as the threshold of hell itself. There they had encountered the most fearful abomination of any they had yet faced, Diablo, a nightmare incarnate, a terrifying horned demon, the colour of blood. They battled desperately, but the struggle was not merely physical. The demon forced Aidan to relive his worst nightmares, greatest failures, and his fears that he would never live up to the expectations of his father. But, convinced that he might still save his brother, Aidan fought through the worst of what Diablo inflicted. The group of adventurers wore the demon down, and ultimately it was Aidan who delivered the killing blow, only to watch the abomination shift before his very eyes into the form of his younger brother, Albrecht. Diablo had possessed the boy's body and twisted it into a physical representation of living terror. I can only imagine that Aidan's mind was shattered upon realizing that he had killed his only brother. When Aidan finished his recounting, he whispered several times, "I thought I could contain it. I thought I could contain it." He went on to mumble a number of other disturbing things, including something about his brothers awaiting him in the east. I knew Aidan was troubled by what he had experienced, and at the time I interpreted what he said as meaningless ramblings. The next day, Aidan was gone. I spoke with Adria soon after his departure, and learned that the warrior had travelled east to seek out mystics who might exorcise the waking nightmare that plagued him. As I meditate back on those days, there is much I would have liked to have asked of Aidan and Adria before they left, as well as many others in town. Unfortunately, such a confused and fettered air hung upon the world back then that I was not thinking clearly.
Not enough mana.
Nor, I suspect, were any of the other remaining citizens of Tristram. Although I did not succumb, as did so many others, to the wave of insanity that swept the land, I did receive a wound to my spirit that I have not recovered from to this day. Dark thoughts always live at the edges of my mind, like vultures awaiting a feast. I must now, regrettably, tell of the most troubling time of my life. It was mere weeks after Diablo's defeat that Tristram fell, once again, to demons. It was only after the town was utterly destroyed and nearly all those who remained were slaughtered and raised from the dead that I myself was taken prisoner. We had no indication where the demons had come from, but even in my weakened state, I surmised that the cause of their appearance was to ensure that no able-bodied combatants were left alive to follow Aiden into the east. It was then that a horrifying realization dawned on me as I recalled Aiden's words. I thought I could contain it. Could it be that Aiden was wrestling with the spirit of Diablo himself? And if so, what were his true intentions in going east? Regardless, the most important piece in all of this is that I survived. And I did so thanks to the efforts of a handful of brave and noble individuals. They had been made aware of my plight and the hellish creatures assailing Tristram. Many had travelled from the far corners of the world, among them a noble paladin of the Zakarum, a brooding necromancer from the eastern jungles, a powerful Amazon from the Scovos Isles, an enigmatic sorceress from Kyrgyzstan, and a mighty barbarian from the slopes of Mount Arcane itself. Together they fought with courage such as I had rarely seen, and ultimately they saved me from the jaws of death. My greatest concern, however, was not for my own well-being. I quickly shared with the heroes my true fear, that Diablo, lurking within Aiden's tortured soul, was guiding the troubled warrior to release the other two primevals that the Horodrim had imprisoned so long ago. For if Aiden released both Baal and Mephisto, humankind would surely suffer an age of darkness and despair beyond imagining. With this then in mind, I convinced a group of champions to travel eastward to intercept Aiden and thwart Diablo's plans. Early on in Aiden's journey, he had crossed paths with an unfortunate soul named Marius. Much of what I know now regarding the events I am about to convey are retrieved from the remains of a cell within a burned-out sanitarium in Westmarch. It was there that Marius, his mind shattered from the time he had spent with Aiden, had carved the accounts of his experience into the floor of his cell with his own fingernails. Fortunately, these writings were still legible, despite the damages to Marius's room. During this time, I referred to Aiden as the Dark Wanderer. After his departure from Tristram, he sought passage to the eastern port of Lane. Passing through the Eastgate Monastery, Aiden encountered the Sisters of the Sightless Eye, many of whom had recently been corrupted by the Maiden of Anguish and Duriel. As with the other demons who invaded Tristram, Andariel had arrived to prevent Aiden's pursuers from interfering with the Wanderer's dire mission. I speculate now that following the Dark Exile and the Prime Evil's banishment, Andariel, and her twin, Duriel, as we shall see, concluded that the Primes would inevitably use the innate powers of man to reclaim the burning hells. Therefore, they endeavoured to gain favour with the Lord of Terror by protecting his human host. In any case, the mighty champions who liberated me from my prison soon faced the Maiden of Anguish. He struck them physically, but battered them emotionally as well, stirring within each of them memories of loss, sadness, betrayal, and regret, feeding on their angst and relishing their despair. Despite the heavy toll on the minds of those she attacked, however, the hunter succeeded in dispatching Andariel after a long haul and hard-fought battle. Though the Maiden of Anguish had not succeeded in killing Aiden's pursuers, he was successful in one respect. He bought the Dark Wanderer time to reach his destination. After traversing the arid deserts of Aranok, the heroes arrived at Lutgo Lane, hot on the Wanderer's heels. It wasn't until they reached the very tombs where the mage Rasha wrestled the demon lord Baal that they finally cornered their prey. There, within Rasha's chamber, the group was faced with Duriel, the Lord of Cain, who, like his sister, had pledged his loyalty to Diablo. Duriel exacted a heavy toll upon the heroes, favouring the agonised screams of the wounded. Though hopelessly fatigued, both mentally and physically, the mortal champions overcame the Maggot King, slaying him as they had his sister. But again, time was of the essence. As the heroes arrived at Rasha's tomb, they realised they were too late to prevent Baal's release. To their amazement, Duriel himself was present. He had arrived there and grappled with Aiden, hoping to prevent him from liberating Baal. Through some means of cruel manipulation, Baal had convinced Marius to remove the amber shard lodged in Rasha's body, thus freeing him. Aiden and Rasha, the latter then fully controlled by Baal, turned their combined might on Duriel. Knowing that he would not prevail against his foes, the Archangel of Justice had ordered Marius to take Baal's stone into the burning hells and shatter it within the Hellforge. As the cowering mortal departed the tomb, Aiden and Rasha overwhelmed Duriel. By the time of the heroes' arrival at the tomb, the two primevals had already set sail across the Twin Seas, the eastern ports of Kuras. The mortal heroes quickly gave chase and nearly caught up to them again, but still the Dark Wanderer managed to escape their grasp. Soon Aiden and Rasha arrived at the temple city of Travancore, then held to be the holiest site of Zakarum. It was there, deep within the bowels of the magnificent temple, that Mephisto's sapphire soulstone was kept. As mentioned earlier in my writings, many of the greatest Zakarum paladins and their commanders had already been corrupted by Mephisto's vile influence long before Aiden and Rasha arrived. It has even been documented that San Kakur, the Kuhagan, or Supreme Patriarch of the Zakarum Church, had fallen under Mephisto's control. This much is certain, not everyone at the temple was corrupt, and Travancore was easily the most heavily guarded site in all of Kyrgyzstan. Regardless, the Wanderer would not be denied. Eyewitness reports suggest that many of the temple's defenders fell prey to overwhelming fear and fled the complex altogether. Additional reports suggest that many more turned against each other, further decimating the Zakarum's ranks. These accounts undoubtedly evidence the influence of the Lords of Terror and Destruction. Ultimately, the Wanderer and Rasha made their way into the temple's innermost chamber, where Mephisto's soulstone was kept. There, they released Mephisto, who quickly took physical possession of the Kuhagan. The tortured body of the Zakarum leader transformed into the hideous visage of Mephisto's demonic form. And thus, after nearly 3 centuries apart, the prime evils were united once again. Within that chamber, the primes devised a final stratagem to retake the burning hells and claim vengeance upon those who overthrew them. This included their long-sought goal to corrupt the Worldstone, thereby enslaving all of humankind and its Nephilim potential to their will. With an army of Nephilim as their vanguard, the primes would quickly overwhelm the Hell's praetorious legions and re-establish their infernal reign for all time. To accomplish this, the primes combined their powers to open a portal that would allow them access to their former domain. It was then that Diablo finally cast off the mortal visage of Prince Aiden and assumed his true demonic form. Intent on rallying the legions within Hell still loyal to the three, Diablo crossed through the shimmering portal. Baal began his long journey north to corrupt the Worldstone, while Mephisto alone remained, bent on destroying any and all opposition to their plan. I hope you enjoyed this look at the Sorceress gameplay in the Diablo II Resurrected Technical Alpha. as well as the Dark Wanderer lore from the Book of Cain. Thank you very much for watching, and GG!